Hi. As I was going through the various learning strategies, instructional strategies, the one that caught my eye was blended learning, and particularly the flipped classroom model type of blended learning. I was wondering if I could use this for my students in ophthalmology. I'm Darby Santiago, and please join me and let us explore the possibility of a flipped classroom model. Do you remember those days when you had to attend lectures series in ophthalmology and without really knowing what they meant, the concepts were too abstract, you cannot apply them, and then even though they tell you that you should apply this in the OPD or the ER, only some of the concepts are relatable in the actual life, no? And so the teacher, the lecture type of teaching, um, is teaches us to memorize the terms and then answer the questions in the final exams, and so in order to pass the course. So when I stumbled upon this flipped classroom idea, it got me all excited. It might just be the answer for students like me before who had difficulty understanding ophthalmology and difficulty applying it. In this flipped classroom type of teaching strategy, it brings the lectures to the home. The students are allowed to bring these lectures at home, maybe read the lecture in a PDF file, and then maybe if they want, they can look for more resources, and also they can study these lectures at and their most convenient time. I mean, if you are more effective in studying at night, at 9 o'clock, then fine, you can study that lecture at night. And the other thing is that you are given the questions which you can answer at your own pace. There's no time pressure to answer the questions at home. And when you go to the classroom, you present the answers to the questions to your group mates, and discuss why is it wrong, what is your source, something like that. No, so it encourages collaboration and teamwork, and at the same time, I think it also develops communication skills and logical argumentation, problem solving skills, and the creativity of each student. No, and in this type of strategy, the teacher becomes the consultant acts just as a coach, and instead of being the sage on the stage, he becomes the guide on the side. And it is implementation is really not a problem because you already the materials that are required in this type of learning strategy is already there. Each medical students have their own tablet or laptop or cell phone, and they have all internet connections. No? And if they don't have any of those, they can just take home the printed material and then study them at home. But the big question is actually, can we use this flipped classroom method for ophthalmology clerks? Is it suitable for the subjects that carry heavy and abstract content, like what we'd have in ophthalmology? I think this is primarily the reason why we should explore more other methods of learning aside from the lecture type that we do today. It's because there's an increased demand in ophthalmological knowledge in for primary care physicians, because especially with the upcoming universal healthcare, primary care physicians should have sufficient understanding of ophthalmology. But as you know, ophthalmology is just a small part in medical education. They don't even allot us, like, they give us only 2 weeks and to teach everything to the students, no? And that's why we have to make use of those precious time in that 2 week time in order to be more effective in leaving knowledge, in imparting knowledge to the students. And what better way to do this than an innovative type of learning strategy? So, in order to prove that we can use flipped classroom in ophthalmology, a group of doctors at the Zhongsan Ophthalmic Center at the Sun Yat-Sen University in Taipei, they decided to make a study. They actually had 44 international medical clerks grouped into two groups. The first group, they gave a lecture-based ocular trauma classroom, and the second and with flipped glaucoma classroom. While the second group, they put them in a flipped ocular trauma classroom and a lecture-based glaucoma classroom. So everyone, what they did was they gave everyone a pre-quiz, 20 points each for glaucoma and ocular trauma. And everyone was given the same learning objectives, the same reading materials were given to, and the same assignment was given to both groups. And and they implemented it. So this is how they did it. No, for the lecture-based classroom, after giving the pre-test, the they were as I said, they gave the learning objectives and lecture handouts, and but that was before the class. And during the class, they listened to the lecture, they took notes, they had some 15 minutes of question and answer session, and after the class, they were set tasked to review the chapter on glaucoma or ocular trauma, and a homework was given. They were given a case and a set of questions. Um, and this same case and set of questions were given also in the flipped classroom type of group. And then they received feedback from the instructors after this, after the submitting. And then they were given a final exam. Well, for the flipped classroom group work, they divided the groups into groups of 3 to 4 individuals, and the leader was assigned to each group. And again, the learning objectives were given. They were all the students were asked to watch the recorded video lecture online at their own time, and they were given the case and question to answer at home with their group, and they were tasked to provide a 6 slide PowerPoint presentation. To give you an idea of what their homework was, here's the glaucoma case that they gave. The patient presenting with acute severe eye pain with ipsilateral headache. On ophthalmic examination, it was revealed that the cornea was edematous and the pupils were mid-dilated. This is a classic sign of your primary angle closure glaucoma. So, the first question was, what other ophthalmic examinations are required for diagnosis of PACG? Question 2, how do you alleviate pain and reduce intraocular pressure? Question 3, how to make differential diagnosis between PACG, common cold, and acute gastroenteritis? Question 4, what clinical signs may follow after the intraocular pressure is decreased? Question 5, what is the normal structure of the anterior chamber angle? What are the Schaefer's and the Shay's grading system? Question 6, how to select the operation method according to the grading of anterior chamber angle or depth? Question 7, how to conduct post-operative follow-ups and evaluate the effectiveness of the surgery. Now, you will notice that these questions are a little bit in-depth, and it's going to be really challenging for the student to answer these questions, even if they're doing group work. And obviously, if they're alone, they cannot do this on their own. So, after doing their assignment, they bring their answers to class, and the teacher, the consultant, welcomes them and let them, she just makes a recaps the case, a short case, and then gives the floor to the students to answer the 7 questions. After everyone has presented, she will summarize what the entire class has said and then review all the questions from the discussions. So during the group report, each group gets to present their answers to each questions, but all the other groups are encouraged to interrupt and challenge their answers, especially if that other group has a different answer than the presenting group. So there's going to be an exchange of thoughts and ideas, and there's contradiction and even a debate, actually. And the same method is applied for the glaucoma flipped classroom and the ocular trauma flipped classroom. After as I've said, no, both the lecture type and the flip type of classrooms, they had to undergo final examination of multiple choice questions, and each question had the same weight. Now, what were the results? And I would have to discuss this a little bit. No, the pretest showed no statistical difference between the two groups. Meaning, when these 44 students entered the study, they had a more or less an equal level of understanding of ophthalmology, the subjects, and the nitty gritty part of it. The f- this is interesting. The final test showed no statistical difference between the two groups. Meaning, wow, I would have thought that the flipped classroom would give more, have higher scores than the typical lecture type, but it did not give any advantage in this particular set of multiple choice questions. But both the teachers and students were more satisfied with the flipped classroom. So the students said the flipped classroom helped them develop their problem solving skills. It helped them develop their creative thinking. And it was fun, and I learned from the teamwork. So most students agree that the climate in flipped classroom is conducive to learning because they get to interact. The interaction was the different rather than listening on a lecture and then going home to answer the questions. However, not all had a stellar or all praises about the flipped classroom type of method, especially those who underwent flipped classroom in the glaucoma module. No, students felt that the ocular trauma flipped classroom was more helpful in terms of developing teamwork and problem-solving skills. And more students in the glaucoma flipped classroom tended to agree that the workload was too heavy. The class was overly theoretical and abstract, and they did not have a clear idea of the expectation of the course. Now, this tells us a lot because it tells us that, being if the topic is too abstract and it's too heavy, and, the students could not understand, like discussing gonioscopy or discussing intraocular pressure and the effect on the optic nerve. It's really something that's very big compared to ocular trauma, which is what we commonly see in the emergency room, there's a corneal laceration or corneal abrasion or a blunt trauma to the eye. That's easier to discuss because the management, the treatment are much more simpler, and you see them actually with your bare eyes. You don't need to imagine structures or things. So that's maybe the reason why the ocular trauma module was more effective for them. And this tells us that not all subjects or topics can be effectively taught using the flipped classroom. So, what are the learning points for this study? No, they say that the flipped classroom model is stimulating because the students are given the lectures to take home and to study, and they're allowed to get more materials, look at more videos than what they're assigned to read or watch. It is playful and it is active and playful, meaning students get to interact. They're not sitting down listening to the lecture. And another lesson is that the flipped classroom model is student centered. Okay, and it goes beyond the learning objectives of the course. It is because when you take home the topic, you tend to read more than what is given to you. So and you tend to watch more. So there is added increase in personal objectives for the for this in this type of learning. No, the third take-home point or learning point is that the flipped classroom model is inclusive. Everyone can effectively give their opinion. They're free, even if it's the dissenting opinion, and or even if their opinion is wrong, at least they're thinking. And the critical thinking part is the most important here, and how they arrive at those arguments is, I think, what is most important. And by doing this, the students tend to be able to retain more knowledge. They don't need to memorize. It comes natural, so the experience is more remembered than sitting in the lecture hall. So, flipped classroom, the approach offers students opportunities to acquire lower order cognitive abilities such as remembering and understanding during before class preparation, and use the valuable face-to-face in class time for the development of higher order cognitive abilities. And so, with this, I'd like to add that I believe that with experience and optimization, the flipped classroom approach will be an effective and highly welcome innovative teaching method in ophthalmology. Maybe not for all subject or topics, but at least this is an alternative that we can use. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you learned something today.